name's Luke. I've kept quiet about this for nearly 17 years, telling only my closest family and a few researchers. Most people just laugh it off. Another kid seeing monsters in the shadows. But what stalked the streets of Wyke that night was flesh and blood. Real. Watching. I was 7, almost 8 when it happened, back in 2008. We lived in this semi-detached house on the eastern edge of Wyke, West Yorkshire, just where the village starts to blend into the fields that border Harold Park. Our street was quiet, the kind where everyone knows everyone, and nothing much ever happens. That Tuesday night in late October, a steady drizzle had been falling since afternoon, coating everything in a slick sheen that reflected the streetlights. Mum had sent me upstairs early for talking back at dinner, some stupid argument about homework I hadn't finished. I remember stomping up to my room, slamming the door like the dramatic kid I was, and throwing myself onto my bed. My bedroom window faced the street, and from my bed I could see the row of houses opposite, and the junction where our road met the narrow path that snaked toward Harold Park. The rain had formed these tiny rivers down my window, distorting the orange glow of the street lamps outside. I was lying there, watching water droplets race each other down the glass, nursing my wounded pride, when the streetlight at the junction flickered. Once, twice, then steady again. That's when I noticed something standing beneath it. At first, my brain tried to make sense of it. Maybe Mr. Wilson from number 23 walking his German Shepherd? But even as the thought formed, I knew it wasn't right. This thing was massive, easily 7 feet tall, but it wasn't standing straight. Its shoulders were hunched forward, its back curved in a way that looked painful, unnatural. Even through the rain-streaked glass, I could see it wasn't human. I sat up slowly, breath caught in my throat, and moved closer to the window. The thing shifted, stepping sideways into the full glow of the streetlight, and I felt my entire body go cold. It was covered in thick, matted fur, not like a costume, but like an animal that had been living rough. The fur was a deep brown, almost black, where the rain had soaked it through, hanging in clumps from its massive frame. Its arms were too long, dangling past what should have been its knees, ending in hands, not paws, but actual hands, with long, curved fingers that dragged against the wet pavement. But its face. God, its face. The snout protruded at least 6 inches from where a human nose should be, glistening wet in the street light. Its mouth hung slightly open, revealing rows of yellowed teeth that looked sharp enough to tear through bone. Thick, ropey strands of saliva dripped from its jaw, mixing with the rain, and its eyes, black, soulless pits that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. I watched, paralyzed, as it dropped to all fours and sniffed at the ground like a dog following a scent. Its movements were jerky, wrong, like someone had taken footage of a bear and played it at the wrong speed. It crawled a few meters down our street, then suddenly reared back up on its hind legs. That's when I noticed the shredded clothing. Clinging to its torso were the tattered remains of what might have once been a red t-shirt, and around its waist, strips of denim hung like blue moss. This wasn't just some animal. Whatever this thing was, it had once worn clothes, had once, perhaps, been human. My breath was fogging up the window, but I couldn't move away. I watched as it lifted its head and seemed to taste the air. Then, with a suddenness that made my heart stop, its head snapped in my direction. Those black eyes fixed directly on mine. Time froze. Rain tapped against my window like tiny fingernails. My lungs burned for air I was too terrified to take in. And then it smiled. Not a human smile of friendliness, but a predator's grin, revealing more of those jagged teeth than I'd seen before. It took a step toward our house. Then another. I finally managed to scream. I fell backward off my bed, scrambling away from the window, screaming for my parents with such terror that my voice cracked. I heard my dad's heavy footsteps pounding up the stairs, my mother calling my name in alarm. When they burst into my room, I was huddled in the corner, pointing frantically at the window, trying to form words through my sobs. Dad went to look, pulling back the curtains I'd tried to yank closed. He stood there for what felt like forever, peering out into the night. "There's nothing there, Luke," he said finally, his voice soft with concern. "Just the rain." But I knew what I'd seen. And worse, it had seen me. That night was just the beginning. For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep without my light on. I'd wake up at odd hours, certain I'd heard heavy breathing outside my window or the scrape of claws against brick. The scratch marks I found on the side of our house near my window, 3 deep, parallel grooves, too high for any normal animal to reach, were dismissed as damage from a fallen branch during a storm. My parents eventually took me to a child psychologist who suggested I'd experienced a particularly vivid night terror combined with an overactive imagination. I stopped talking about it after a while. What was the point? No one believed me. But I know what I saw. In the years since, I've researched obsessively, tracking down similar sightings around West Yorkshire. The werewolf of Bradford, the beast of Frizinghall. Reports stretching back decades of a hulking, fur-covered creature lurking in wooded areas and on the outskirts of towns. I'm 25 now, living in my own flat in Leeds, miles away from Wyke. But sometimes, when I visit my parents and walk past that junction at dusk, I feel the weight of those black eyes on me again. And I wonder if it remembers the small boy who saw it that rainy night, if it's been waiting all these years, because whatever that thing was, monster, undiscovered species, or something science can't explain, it knew I had seen it. And there was intelligence behind those eyes. Patient, calculating, hungry. If this encounter chilled you to the bone and you're hungry for more real-life horror stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for weekly tales that'll keep you checking under your bed at night.